So welcome everyone to an Elevate Lane County Working Wednesday webinar. Say that 10 times fast. My name is Lizzie Gray and I'm the project coordinator for Connected Lane County. And today we are talking about time management, a professional skill that we all should have. I'm joined by Joshua Monhay. Joshua, thank you for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Actually, I have it part of my presentation, so I'll switch over here. But yeah, I used to work for the Chamber of Commerce, and I've helped Elevate for many years with their programs, and so always excited to jump in and help. Right now, I work as a business consultant, and so I have to kind of comment on a variety of topics. So I'm so excited to do time management.
Very
it's
cool.
One of the things that I know a lot about, but also need to practice myself. So this is great.
I think that we all do. That's for sure.
Right.
So everyone, while Joshua leads us through the webinar, please type in any questions that you have into the chat feature. We'll have time saved after this presentation to ask him all of those questions. So let them flow. All right, Joshua, it's all you.
Great. So time management, what is it? I mean, there's so many different ways to address how to manage your time or how to view it. Pretty much time management is you're trying to get a bunch of things done in a limited amount of time. And so you're kind of juggling time, you're juggling tasks, and you're trying to figure out where the balance is for that. So I did a little bit about me, and I'll do a little bit more. So I got 20 years of professional work experience. I have a bachelor's in economics. I've been an entrepreneur and helped over 100 businesses from a variety of sectors in different ways. Family, I've got wife, 2 kids, and 1 dog. So you might hear the dog in the background. Apologize in advance. And then hobbies, gardening, cooking, and Warhammer 40K. It's like online gaming, or tabletop gaming kind of thing, little miniatures. It's fun. Anyway, so time management, kind of talked a little bit about what it is, and kind of wanted to bring down some definitions. So it's the process of planning and organizing your time between specific activities. Again, just trying to get many things done in a limited amount of time, and so you're kind of juggling your time. So I kind of wanted to start off with an exercise just to kind of get people kind of thinking about time management and how they intersect with what that is or that skill. So take a few seconds and write down one of the days that you felt that you were most productive. I mean, what was a time that you felt, man, I got a lot done that day? Just go ahead and kind of write out what that day looked like, how you felt during that day. Maybe also take a few seconds, how did you get it all done? Like what was the key to success for you to have that day that was really, really productive? For some of the students, it's probably a school day or school projects or maybe multiple projects that you've gotten done. So now kind of taking that information and kind of that idea of like, okay, I know there are days when I can get a lot of things done. With this presentation, what I wanted to do was kind of take that feeling of, oh, wow, I got a lot done, and then figure out how to duplicate that so you could have that success across multiple days. And so with this time management presentation, the idea is that we're going to outline kind of what time management is, how to use it. It is a skill, so some of the stuff that I'm going to give you, it's kind of practical things to practice. And as you start practicing this, you get to the point where you'll be able to take on projects and take on bigger tasks and have really productive times and get a lot done. So that's kind of what we're looking to do here. So why is time management important? Time, Peter Drucker, who's kind of the godfather of business planning and structuring, says time is the scarcest resource, and unless it's managed, nothing else can be managed. If you think about it, we all have 24 hours in a day, we have 7 days a week, we have 365 days a year, 366 leap years. But anyway, so time is a resource that, once it's spent, you can't get it back. I mean, it's not something that, if you had $10 and you bought a bunch of things, you can go earn $10 more and go buy other things. But time, once it's gone, it's gone. So And then we've had some other kind of great figures that had some comments about time. Abraham Lincoln, you know, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first hour sharpening the axe. You know, it's kind of one of those things. It's like you've got a big project, you've got a task that you have to get done. Kind of the first step, and this is kind of tying into it, you want to make sure that you manage your time appropriately, and part of that is a planning process. So you want to make sure that you are spending a decent amount of time figuring out how to plan your time. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this. And then another great quote is Benjamin Franklin, failing to plan is a plan to fail. So with time management, definitely planning is a big component and a big piece of that. So how do you manage your time? You know, you think, oh, I have a project due next week. I'm sure I'll get it done. But really, you need to plan a little bit more. So take an inventory of the time that you have. You know, basically outline the time that you have to work on things for one cycle. So, you know, is time management something that you can use for your whole life, or is it for specific projects? No, the answer is yes. Just kind of figure out the time that you're trying to manage, and then take an inventory of it. So let's say that you have a school project that's due in a week. You kind of want to look at the inventory of time that you have. Make sure you account for meals, sleep, breaks, chores, other obligations that you have. Then the next piece is you want to basically do an inventory of tasks. So what needs to be done? You know, that paper that's due in a week, sure, that's the final product, but what are the steps that will get you to that final project? Usually it's research, maybe some writing, and then editing. So kind of list those tasks out. And then the next thing is you have to determine your priority, kind of make a list of what needs to get done. And I'm going to go into these a little more detail in the following slides. So you kind of want to determine your priorities and kind of work on the first things first. And then you want to schedule out your time, kind of write it out, get it organized, and communicate it with other people that you have to live life with. Then you work the plan, make sure you try it a few times, and then kind of make tweaks as you need. And then review the results. Hey, how did this go? You know, so usually with the paper, when you turn it in, you're like, how do I feel after I got it done? Or, you know, you get a grade in a couple weeks and you're like, oh man, I didn't dedicate enough time to this. So, you know, something I'll have to watch out for. And then celebrate. And I put celebrate in here because, you know, usually when you're doing time management, it's usually for a specific task or objective or project. And so you want to make sure to celebrate those things that you get done. So let's go in a little more detail to this. So inventory your time. You know, I'm an econ major, so I love graphs and data and information. And so this might be a little overkill for some of you, but you know, my hope is that I put something out there, and then if you have to modify it to what you can use, that's totally fine. So first thing you want to do is identify what time you have open. So use a calendar or planner. Dig out your sleep schedule. You know, your parents might think that or parents or guardians might think that you're going to bed at 10 o'clock, but you're really going to bed at 12 or 1. That's fine. Just on your planner, make sure you write down what you're actually doing. So kind of keep an eye on your sleep schedule. You know, don't forget that you have chores and other tasks possibly. You know, if you have to take a sibling to school, or if you have to go visit your relatives on a weekly basis, whatever that is, make sure to schedule that out. And then sports and events, probably not so much now these days, but you know, there was a time where, you know, you had other competing interests. And then don't forget times to eat. You know, you might think, oh, hey, that project's due in 2 days and I'm going to spend, you know, 8 hours a day for the next 2 days getting it done. Well, you're going to have to do other things that aren't going to be able to just be focused on that. So kind of block that off. And then these slides, we'll make them available through Elevate. So if you don't have these resources, if you don't have a calendar or whatever, we can send you a PDF. You can print that out or have that available for online. So literally take an inventory of your time is kind of the takeaway from here. So the next one is write out everything that has to get done. Be precise. Break your projects into smaller tasks. You know, if you have a 10-page paper that's due in 2 weeks, when are you going to do your outline? When are you going to do your research? When are you going to ask somebody to read it? break those down into smaller tasks and get those listed out. I strongly recommend that when you do an inventory of your tasks, put down the task name, what's needed. Sometimes you need quiet space, you need a piece of paper, you need a pen, whatever it is, make sure that you kind of list that there too, because the last thing you want to do is go to get started and then not have the resources that you need. You want to estimate the time that you think it's going to take. Even with this presentation, I know that I have a timeline and I'm trying to work on that timeline. And sometimes things will ebb and flow a little bit differently, but at least I know what the targets is that I'm trying to hit. Create a due date. Due dates are important because you need to know what you're working towards. And then priority, you want to wait on this. So list everything out and then wait on the priority, and I'll kind of show you a matrix here on the next page for what the priority is. One second. So priorities. Okay, now you're looking at this and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this thing? This is called a priority matrix. And the idea is that you want to focus on the things that are urgent and important, and kind of stay away from the things that are not important and not urgent. So when you're trying to figure out your priorities, maybe first you label it, Q1, Q2, 3 or 4. And then when you have a bunch of Q1s, you kind of have to figure out maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 on what you're going to get done. So things that are kind of urgent and important are like a deadline for a project, maybe a crisis that you have, or some sort of pressing problem. So maybe you're doing research and that you can't find an adequate resource. That's going to be probably pushed up on your priorities because you want to make sure that you're going to get that research that you need, or if a draft is due, etc. And then part of this with the priority matrix is schedule the not urgent stuff. So, maybe it's important that you hang out with your friends or that you're connecting with other people. I don't want to say that, the task that you're trying to do is the most important thing, but you're trying to give priority to it. And so those things that are not urgent, you can always schedule those things. So go back to, 2 steps back and inventory your time and schedule that in there so you can make sure that you can get that done, but still achieve your overall task. And then know that interruptions are going to happen. So as well as you schedule, as well as you plan it, kind of put in there a little bit of padding. Maybe you're supposed to have the draft due on Wednesday and something happens Tuesday night. If you have to push that off till Thursday, great. But if your paper is due on Friday, you're going to have to figure out how to manage those priorities. So do your best to schedule those and kind of create what's important. Again, this is a guide. It's not a hard and fast rule. So everything we're going to give you, it's a skill you can practice, you can try, and make exceptions as needed. So now the next time is scheduling your time. So you've got your inventory of time, you've got your tasks, you're kind of figuring out your priorities. Next thing you have to do is schedule it. So if you don't write it down, it's not going to happen. And when you're trying to figure out how to schedule a time, I kind of always thought of Mark Twain's quote, if it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat 2 frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first. Because if you eat a live frog first thing in the morning, what's the worst that will happen for the rest of the day? So think of this task or this work that you have to do. A lot of people sometimes suggest that, let's get the easy stuff out of the way. Well, yeah, that's nice. And that can build a little morale, but really you should practice doing the big, ugly thing that you don't want to do. And I'm putting that first and getting that out of the way. So when you're thinking schedule time, think of frogs. And then when you do write it down on your calendar, be sure to let other people know that are involved in your life, kind of what you're trying to do. So, if you have parents or guardians or, whoever you're living with, let them know, hey, I've got this project due in 2 weeks. Here's kind of the times that I'm trying to get this done. Can you help me succeed at this? The nice thing is by communicating that to other people, they know what you're working on, they know kind of where you are in the process. And it'll be easier to kind of get those times where you really need to focus and get that task done. All right. So, and then the next step is work the plan. So you've created, you've inventoried your time, you've got your tasks, you've created priorities, you've scheduled it. Now work the plan. Sometimes when you're going along, you're like, oh, maybe I need more time, maybe I need more less time. If it's a project that's due at the end of the month and you're going week by week, kind of run your plan the first week, then at the end of it, figure out if you need to make changes. Don't try to change mid-plan. It's a kind of process improvement, incrementally getting to where you need to be. And so you kind of want to work the plan each time. So the plan on the left, it's kind of, what you think is going to happen, and then you think it's going to be a straight line to your great result. Well, the reality is it's going to be messy. So you're going to have your plan. You're not going to make some of your scheduled times. You're going to have to move things around. That's okay. Just know that at least you're trying to keep the train on the tracks and you're trying to stay focused on what you're trying to get done. Other priorities will arise. So during the week, maybe you thought, oh, I only needed 2 things of research. You read your notes. Oh, I need 3 things of research. Well, then you're going to have to go back and add that task and then reprioritize that. So that'll happen. Just go ahead and add those in and make sure you kind of work those into your plan. Distractions will happen. It would be nice if life just pauses while you're trying to focus on everything, but that doesn't always happen. And then while you're going through the process, take notes and trust the process. So maybe there's, you realize, oh, 3 o'clock in the afternoon is really not the best time to sit at the kitchen table and try to study because, I've got other people coming home, my parents ask me questions, the dogs bark, whatever it is. Take notes and kind of figure out, okay, what can I do to fix this for next time? Okay, so you're going through all these steps and you work the plan, boom, what's the result? Take time to review the process. So, how did you do? When you turned in that paper, were you stressed out and you're like, oh my gosh, I should have put more time on this? Or were you like, man, that was easy? Maybe you spent too much time on it and overstressed. So kind of review the results and see how you did. Kind of think about what you would change. Maybe what were some of the interferences or some of the distractions that you had? Maybe there's a better way to spend your time, figuring out what distractions you have and kind of working around those. And then what will you change for next time? So when you go into that next process, kind of take your notes from before and figure out what you're going to do next. Now, I basically outlined that this is a very important step because you need to practice this. You need to practice this review process to figure out how you're doing with your time management so that you can become better skilled at managing your time. So don't skip this step. It's very important. And then the final step, celebrate. You did it. You got the project done. You got the paper in, whatever it is you're trying to do. Scale the celebration to your activity. So maybe you had a 1-page paper due. Don't take 6 hours off and play video games, or just kind of scale it appropriately. So if it is a big project that you've got done, let's say it's a final paper and it's 10 pages. Okay, great. Take 6 hours. Just kind of match the time energy that you did there. Make sure you reward yourself for staying on task and focus, and note what you did and the success for that. So in building this presentation, I was also asked maybe some best practices or things to kind of think about. So while you're going through this, kind of some best practices are here. 1, limit distractions. Those focus times that you have, really try to make sure that you protect those and you kind of really carve out a good time for that. Again, I use the kitchen table as an example. If you're sitting at the kitchen table and somebody's making a sandwich or something, and or multiple sandwiches, or having conversation in the background, just kind of be aware of what's, that might be a distraction. Turn your phone off. You might have your favorite game or whatever you're doing. If you're not looking at it for like 30 minutes to an hour while you're focusing, it shouldn't be the end of the world. So I think that's a good idea. Break your tasks down to smaller pieces. The idea is that you want to get things done. And so if one of your tasks is to, edit your paper and it's 6 pages long and the edit process is you and somebody else, then put that you need peer review and then you need to review it. Break those into 2 pieces. And then create a space to plan. So, focusing and doing the work is great, but also create a space that you can plan the work that you want to do. So, make sure that you, just take the planning step as part of the whole process of actually doing the work, and then write everything down in one place. I notoriously have written things down in multiple places, and so sometimes my planning session is just finding where I wrote everything down, and so write it down in one book, one binder. If it's about a specific project or a specific thing that you're trying to get done, do that, and then review your plan daily. It's easy right now, especially in this time, to kind of get lost of what day it is. What is it, a weekend or not? I don't know. Just review your plan daily and kind of get a mindset of, okay, where's the goal? So the goal week is 2 weeks out. Every day, just check in to see how you're doing. Maybe you don't have any focus sessions scheduled Monday or Tuesday, but still just look at that plan so you know that Wednesday, I really got to focus on this and get this done. And then celebrate on a scale that makes sense. I like celebrating. But yeah, just if it's a small project, small celebration, there you go. A couple other things. Don't be discouraged. Hang in there. Life happens. So, I kind of put some deterrents on what can deter you from some of this. So procrastination is probably the biggest one. You've got that project that's due 2 weeks and you're like, I'm fine. And, 13 days later, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get this done. So, maybe you're procrastinating because you're afraid of the work, you're insecure about the results, you're depressed, you're bored, whatever. I kind of put some solutions there so you guys can kind of read through that. Procrastination is a tough one to fight against. The other deterrent that's in here is complicated task. So maybe there is something that you feel like, oh my gosh, this is too big. I don't know how to do this. The first thing you do is ask for help. There's between Elevate and your teachers, your counselors, other people in the world, you're probably doing something that other people have done. And so they can help you and kind of help you figure out how to break that down. The other one is underestimation. I like to think that I'm a great writer and I'm able to kind of get things done last minute, but reality is I'm not. I need to plan. And when I plan, you can kind of tell, that things are running smoother and where I'm actually getting things done. So really take care to make sure that you're giving enough time for that paper. So if it's 40% of your grade, it should be taking 40% of your time to, of school time to get this done, or homework time. So make sure that you kind of match those up. And then resources. So the frogs, there's a book called Eat That Frog, and it's just basically how to deal with procrastination and get things done. There's another book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's a teen version for that. So, they broke down, hey, this is what successful people have done. Here's some habits that you could pick up. I also put down some apps, and I'm going to go a little bit into the Pomodoro one in here in a second. But you got, you want to have it on your calendar. You want to have Outlook, you want a Google Calendar. If you're working on a project with multiple people, one of the project management systems that you can use is called Asana. There's Basecamp, Trello, and Monday.com. Those are for like complex projects. So maybe it's a group project that's due at the end of the semester. You need to have all the information in one spot. You need to have people working on different pieces. These project management systems will allow you to do that. And then other resources, hey, pen and paper works just as good as anything else. So, you don't have to have all this fancy stuff to get it done. You just need to, these things should assist you in getting the work done. They shouldn't be the reason why you are or aren't getting it done. But definitely pen and paper, calendar of some sort, and then people that you can lean on or ask for help. So I put the logos there. So the Pomodoro technique, I'm going to give you just kind of a brief rundown on what that is. So Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. And the idea was that you would focus for the time that you could turn one tomato timer, like little timer, turn it all the way, and get a task done and kind of focus. And so they found that if you focus for about 25 minutes, you can get a lot done because your mind is just focused and honed in. So the idea is that you want to try to get as many Pomodoros done in a day that you can. So it's a 25-minute session. When you do those 25-minute sessions, you work for 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and then you go back to 25-minute sessions. And I put the Wikipedia information there so you can kind of read about that. Or you can Google it too, even from this presentation. It's just a great way. So maybe you're one of those people like, I don't want to sit there for 3 hours and focus, on one thing. And well, if you have small tasks and you can do Pomodoros through it, it's kind of a neat way to kind of get that done. And then, oh, an example of a project that I did. So I don't know if you guys heard of Wayfair. They're a furniture company based in the East Coast. I was working at the chamber and I got a phone call. They were initially looking at coming to the area. And so we did a bunch of research for them. And they decided, hey, we want to come visit. We want to come out to your place. Oh my gosh. We had to show multiple locations. We had to have them talk to a million people. And so I knew the date they were coming. And so then I had to use this process to basically figure out how I'm going to get this whole day done. So the day that they flew in to the day they left, basically I had to plan it all. And it was really interesting. I had to basically got a plan outlined where I had economic development folks in the morning, I had college representatives shortly after that, staffing agencies, local employers. I had to get lunch and have that ready for them. Then after lunch, we went for tour locations. I had to have water in the car and snacks. And then I planned these really circuitous routes so they could see all the cool projects that are happening in Eugene and Springfield. Had to show them neighborhoods. And then I finally had to get them to the next destination. And so how was I going to coordinate all of that? It was probably about 30 people I was trying to coordinate. So it very complex, and I needed to have that really focused. And so then added bonuses, there are other things I had to kind of think about for this project. I negotiated hotel rates for the visitors so they could get a good deal on their hotels. I had gifts in their room. I was like, hey, they have to be here. So let's show them some of the local products that we have in the area. The tours, I had to prepare the reps that were coming to meet with the visitors. I kind of had to schedule a little bit of time. So I was like, hey, I need you here at 8 o'clock, but actually I need you here at 7:50 so we can talk for 10 minutes. So when you go in at 8, you kind of know what you're getting into. So I had to plan for those, plan circuitous routes, scheduled everyone at every spot. I mean, it was really weird to walk up to a spot and there's like 4 people waiting and you would go right into something. And then I had backups in case of delays, so at one point we got stuck because they wanted to do a walking tour of a building and that was pushing me off for the next place. But I had a cell phone number and I had the people ready to go saying, hey, there was possible delay. So the end result for that, 600 new jobs came to the area. It's an award-winning national employer that's here in the Eugene Springfield area. So I count that as a win. So there is my presentation on time management. And I thank you so much for this time. Do you guys have any questions?
Joshua, that was wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. There are questions in the queue, so I'll start with the first. How do you work past the habit of only getting motivated when a deadline is looming? So, AKA procrastination.
Yeah, that's a hard one. There's actually information out there that shows that college students and master level students, they get addicted to that feeling of like, oh my gosh, the world's coming to an end. They get it done and like, woohoo, I did it. And so yeah, you kind of build your brain to respond that way. The best thing to do is to really work on a plan and kind of run through what I gave was a good framework. I would practice that, maybe not for all your projects, but pick one project that you're going to walk through that process, because you kind of want to train your brain to be happy with the process. So that response that you get, it's like every time you get those tasks done or every time you get one piece of that done, you get that same feeling. Imagine if you can spread that out every time you get down. That's what my recommendation would be.
That's good. That's a good idea. What are some good ideas for rewards after completing a task?
Ooh, some good rewards.
Yeah.
Check your phone. Yeah, maybe you didn't check it for 25 minutes. Hey, see what happened,
Yeah.
Get up for a walk. With the Pomodoro technique, once you get a couple of those done, then you take a 15-minute break. I would say get up, walk around.
Go get a coffee.
Yeah, get a coffee, grab a snack, go on a nature walk. Do something that's distracting, that's not what you were already doing. So if you were on the computer, I wouldn't recommend taking a break on the computer. I would do something else. Maybe look at your phone or something
Yeah. So from computer to phone.
like that.
I'm just kidding.
One screen to another. Yeah,
Right,
no.
no.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. How do you how do you manage anxiety about starting a project, even if
Oh,
you know that you'll feel better once you start?
yeah. It's that frog thing, it's, you're afraid if you have okay. If you're worried about starting a project, let's say that you're worried about a paper that's due and you're worried about starting the writing part of it, like, how am I going to write 1,000 words? Take a step back and make a plan. So if you plan an outline, that's kind of your easy way to start that process. So maybe you're freaked out about writing 1,000 words, but you're not going to be so freaked out about creating an outline.
Yeah.
Well, once you have the outline, then you're like, oh, I have to write 1,000 words, but here's the outline, so I can just work through my outline to write what I need to do. That should alleviate that big task. So, so 2 parts. 1, create a plan that'll help you to tackle that, and then 2, break that big worry that you have into smaller tasks that you can kind of build into.
Great. And then I feel like too, once you do that successfully, your anxiety level will go down at the beginning of every project.
Yeah, because you already be started,
Right. Right. Have your time management strategies changed since the nature of your work has changed?
Yes and no. Some of this stuff I do a little bit of intuitively because I've kind of practiced like knowing when things are due and then how to build into it. But I think what I provided was just kind of a rough outline, and I think it's got enough bones to it that you can kind of flesh out what you need into that. Yeah, I don't know. It's actually good to do this because then it reminds me too, like, okay, when I got these things, I got to go through this process. So, yeah, I probably do stray away from it a little bit, but I do come back to kind of this process. So.
Cool. What do you wish you had known about time management in high school?
That the dumb thing even existed.
Anything?
Yeah, I know, right? Seriously. If I could have had somebody sit down and, well, I probably wouldn't have listened, but maybe I would have. Just understanding, hey, you've got a finite amount of time. If you could structure and organize it, you can do the things that you have to do to be able to get to the things that you want to do. And so you can kind of find the balance on that if you could manage your time appropriately. So
yeah.
I kind of wish I would have known that better. So.
Right. I was a religious color-coded planner user, but I think I could.
Oh, wow.
I think I could have worked a lot harder on sticking to the tasks at hand. I did a really nice job of like writing them out, but I wasn't always sticking to them.
Oh yeah, it's great to make a plan, but if you don't work it, then yeah.
What steps do you take to minimize distractions when you're working?
I'm a little more seasoned, so I kind of have an idea of what can be distracting for me. I just try to take notes. You work in an environment and then you kind of go, oh, that didn't work. Coffee shops, like back in the day when I was doing project work, working at a coffee shop, there's some coffee shops that the ambient noise was just right. So there was like people and activity, but it wasn't distracting. And so I knew, okay, I can go there. And then the places that, had low ceilings and you could hear the conversation of 3 people around you, I kind of realized, oh yeah, that's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I also know, like, you go out to eat to restaurants and they have TVs kind of in the background, and then you're kind of like talking to a person, but then you're kind of looking up, there's just anything that's going to catch your eye or kind of pull you away from what you're trying to do. I think you could probably chalk that up as a distraction. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you do learn that about yourself over time, what environments you thrive in and which are more distracting than anything.
Yeah, and I think, if you follow kind of some of the guidelines that I put in here, you're like, oh, mom, dad, guardian, whoever, I can totally do my homework in front of the TV. And then you're getting C's or things aren't getting done.
Right.
You might want to reevaluate your ability to do that.
Yeah. Yes, that's very true. What else do we have? So short-term versus long-term planning. Do you use the same method? Because in my experience, they feel very different. But I'm curious if you
Short term, I think you kind of use an abbreviated version of what I put together. So, let's say you have the end of the day to get something done. Well, you should still kind of know, oh, but I have to go to the store and I have to do this and I have to do that. And so, yeah, you kind of use a shorter version of that. The short-term goals should feed into long-term goals. So if you're trying to, I don't know, let's say you have a project that comes up and you have to get it done by the end of the day, but then you still have like 3 more things to do by the end of the week. You kind of want to make sure that you're managing your time appropriately so you still leave time for other things. Yeah, it depends on what your goals are too, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense. So I have a question because I tend to do this in my head and I'm curious if you do too. But say you have a huge deadline on June 1st. Do you set a different final deadline for yourself? So maybe like 24 hours ahead, 2 days before. I know you talked about buffering time between tasks.
Yeah.
I'm curious if your final deadline aligns with the actual final deadline.
Yeah, so this is like the snooze alarm on your clock, and you're like, okay, I'm going to set it for 7 o'clock in the morning, but I'm not going to really be up till 10. I'm just going to snooze my way through it. No, you can't do that. Like, you should set hard deadlines for yourself. So, maybe, if you do have a project that's due at the end of the month and that's the hard deadline, you still want to get it done 2 or 3 days in advance of that. So I would make that your deadline. Because the other thing is you can also get addicted to not just the procrastination part of it, but then also the idea that, that's okay. I can push that off until, because the real date is further out. And so you kind of get this thing where you keep kicking the can down the road. So really just set a goal a couple days before, make that your hard to give you that flexibility that you need, but try not to be practiced in taking that flexibility unless you absolutely need to.
Yeah. What do you do when things go wrong? When you've laid out this beautiful plan, and I know you said prepare for things to go wrong, but how do you talk yourself out of maybe a negative mindset or the spiraling effect?
Oh yeah. Oh, that's hard. The idea is that you're trying to get something done and you got to remember why it is that you got yourself into that whole situation. And so maybe you have other extenuating circumstances that are keeping you from getting that done or kind of derailed your plan. If it's something you can control yourself, then you need to go back to your plan and kind of think like, was I being overly aggressive or, was I trying to get too much done or did I not leave enough wiggle room?
Right.
Do that. If it's external things, maybe something happens to a family member or friend or I don't know, those kind of things, figure out where go back to the priorities thing and reprioritize that, add that thing in there, maybe your friend broke up with, their significant other or whatever. Okay. We'll throw it in there and see. And, if you want to tell your parents, I got to be on this paper because my friend broke up with their friend and just know that that's a possibility. So
true. Very true. Well, it looks like that might be it for questions from the audience. Do you have any parting advice for the group? I know that was loaded with advice and tips, but any general life advice for the young people watching?
Yeah, I think, time management's a skill. So it's not something you're going to get right out the gate. You need to practice it, and it's a good discipline to have. The worst thing is you could practice this and maybe never really use it in the same way, but it'll still be kind of in there as one of those things you're like, oh, I kind of know how to take on these projects, or I know how to kind of do these things. So, don't get discouraged. And, if you practice this, it'll actually free you up to have more time to do the things that you're really passionate about or that you really enjoy. So, yeah, I would say it's definitely a good skill to practice and develop.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you, Joshua, for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Next week, folks, we have a Working Wednesday on public speaking, a great fear of many. So tune back in on Wednesday to learn some tips and tricks to make that a little less painful. Alrighty. Bye, everybody.